Welcome to Astro Chat with Anne Sundell, Kimberly Williams, and Monica Anna. We are three professional astrologers living in three separate countries, coming together every new and full moon to share our 3 points of view on astrology. Whether you enjoy deep dives into the current transits or you are just beginning to learn about astrology for the first time, there is a place for you here. All that is required is an appreciation for astrology, along with respect for the various traditions within it. So grab a mug of coffee, your favorite cup of tea, or any other beverage of your choice, and join us for a chat on the astrology of the next 2 weeks. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another Astro Chat. Once again, it is the three of us, myself, Kimberly Williams, Anne Sundell, and Monica Anna. And we're coming together to look at the upcoming new moon / solar eclipse in Aries. It's happening on March 29th here in the central time zone of the U.S. That's 5:59 a.m. in the morning. Across the pond, it would be 10:59 over in England, and in Finland, 12:59 in the afternoon, or almost 1 o'clock. Feel free to convert this to your time zone if you don't live in one of the 3 countries we live in. And let's jump in and see what we have there. A couple of things of note is that even though this is about an eclipse, this is the last eclipse of this cycle in Aries Libra axis. If you go back and listen to some of our other podcasts about the Aries eclipse that we've had over the last, almost 2 years, you'll get a lot of information that might be useful here as well. You'll find that as we go forward, we're going to touch on the eclipse, but there's some energy around Neptune, Venus, and Mars that we're going to focus on more heavily. But before we dive into all that, let's pause and let's start off by looking at the Sabian symbol of this new moon.
The Sabian symbol I will read is for 10 degrees of Aries, and it's a teacher gives new symbolic forms to traditional images. That's a lot about new energy, new direction, revision of things, revision of what we have learned so far with this cycle. And this is the last eclipse in Aries too. It's a lot about rewrapping that period, but also new moon, Aries, moving forward maybe, and it's a new cycle of experience.
That feels appropriate as we are closing out the Aries Libra energy and fully stepping into the Virgo Pisces. The nodes have already shifted, but we've been dealing with this over and over for a while. And there's a whole lot of Aries energy throughout the month, not just with the eclipses. This idea of we want to start off, but you have to go back and give meaning, new meaning to those old forms before you can go ahead. I really like it. I'm having to sit with it to process what it really means for me, but I'm finding it challenging and exciting as a symbol to guide us through this energy.
I think it's actually really appropriate for that Saturn Pisces still. The idea of symbols are alive, and they should be alive. And when they fossilize, they stop being symbols, they stop being signs. And I always like the idea, the difference between symbol and a sign. Symbol has such a deep meaning, has such a deep and big and deep expression of what it represents. It doesn't represent one thing. When a sign, it's very much what it is. When you drive and you see a stop sign, there is no interpretation, there is no meaning, there is no, oh, it might mean this, but in different situation might mean that. No, stop sign means you better stop. But with the symbol, if we bring any religious symbolism, if we bring a symbol of archetypal symbol of a mother, again, there can be so much meaning assigned to it. And I do think that there is that element of symbols as an archetypes being alive in our collective unconscious and expressing themselves, which means as we grow, as our consciousness changes, those symbols or those alive archetypes can express themselves slightly differently. I really like that this Sabian symbol means teacher assigning new meaning, because it is, they should be expressing. And again, whether it's politics or religion or our own familiar traditions, The moment we stop looking at the symbol, that's something that changes and evolves and grows with us, that's the moment it fossilizes and holds us back. I really like the Sabian symbol for this eclipse.
And this eclipse, before we talk about the eclipse, let's look at the fact that it is also a new moon. All the solar eclipses happen on the new moon. It is a new moon in Aries. And many of us are familiar with Aries energy. Let's take action. Let's do it now. Aries' favorite time of day. It's about being focused on the self, myself. What do I need? What do I want? What do I want to do? How am I going to go do that? And a strong urge for independence. Aries is a very powerful sign. Often, when we have a lot of Aries energy in our charts, we may be pushed into leadership, but that's not really Aries' comfort zone. I don't want to lead. I don't want followers. They're just going to hold me back. They're going to slow me down. I want to be independent. I want to do my own thing. And Aries energy can also put us in touch with a lot of emotions. And let's not forget that this is not a sun in Aries we're talking about, it's a moon. And so emotions, our family connections, things that are beneath the conscious line surface are going to be important. One of the emotions that comes to my mind when I think about Aries is twofold. It is both anger and excitement. Anger isn't just the temper tantrum or the fury. Anger can come out in so many ways: irritation, impatience, aggravation, all those things that just get us very grouchy and prickly and build until they erupt as anger. So the things that have been holding us back, or the people, or the situations that have been holding us back, we may find that's it. We're hitting that breaking point, or we're breaking through. And excitement. The reason that Aries energy is about what do I want to do now is usually because I want to be excited. I want to be in that place of let's move this energy. And in fact, whenever I have challenges with Aries energy, one of the things I focus on is how can I move that energy? How can I move things in my body? How can I go dance? How can I start a new house project? How do I get that body to move and channel the energy that's built up so it has a way to go and to get out? And lastly, for me, due to the fact that it's a moon that we're talking about, it's a new moon energy, and new moons often are about things we don't quite see fully yet. They're coming into vision. The moon is currently dark and coming into light. And also the fact that it's an eclipse, which eclipses are always about times of change. I feel like this could be something about initiation. And that really, for me, ties in with the Sabian symbol that Anne was mentioning. This idea of I'm ready to start something new, but it's not fully new. I'm going back and starting something in a new way. I'm being initiated into a deeper understanding or deeper knowing, initiated into the mysteries of seeing something from a new point of view. So now I can do new things with that information or that knowledge or that skill. I do think this may be a time where we are initiating others or being initiated in some shape or form. How does that resonate for y'all? And what do you think about when you think about a new moon in Aries?
It's so spontaneous. With a new, I think about Aries like the baby of the zodiac. Where I was looking at my small child and he wants something and he go running, just like I thought, like, what if all people did that? Just spontaneous, go after what you want. Like the energy of that happiness, like Aries can have, also inspire others to follow and create a new start.
Agreed. And it's what you're both actually saying about leadership, isn't it? The Aries leadership is different. Aries doesn't organize leader. It's not an organized leadership like the Capricorn. It's not the structure. I'll set up the structure and then we can go. Aries is just like, oh my God, this is so cool. I'm going. And people, oh, where are they going? Oh, it's cool. I'll just follow because I don't want to miss that fun. I don't want to miss that. So they just follow that exciting energy. When I think about Aries, it's very much, Kimberly, what you were saying about that energy of initiation. Aries is pioneer. That leadership quality of Aries is actually just trying something new. And then people get excited and interested. Like, oh, you're exploring something, you're going somewhere new, you're like, it's exciting. It's different type of leadership in there. It's not the organized, it's not the structured one. It's not like I want to have a following. It's just, I'm just going to go up and run. And it's one of those ideas. When you see someone running, should you follow them? Running towards something or from something? But very much the new moon energy in Aries is that energy of pioneering. We're talking about when the sun enters Aries, it's the spring equinox. It's the days are then even, and their days started growing in the northern hemisphere. It's that moment of spring, of things waking up and coming to light and breaking through sometimes still frozen ground. That's where you have to have that fire of your conviction, that fire of your courage to go through and still break through a hard and frozen ground. And I think that's the energy of the new moon, when we're planting seeds at the new moon, when we're planting our dreams, our manifestations, that energy of I have courage, I have conviction, I have that passion and that fire in me, that I will burst forth from the darkness into the light, even through the frozen ground. But as always, if there is an eclipse, I always suggest like holding back with the manifestation, holding back with planting seeds, because we have a double darkness. We not only have the darkness of the dark moon when the sun and the moon are aligned, so there is no light in the sky. And it's really interesting if you ever have opportunity to be in a countryside, to be somewhere where you can see the sky, you can literally see like a black dot in the sky. It's just really weird. It's when you see the sky, you see this darkness of the sky, and where the moon should be, very often you can see that dark dot, which just looks like there is a hole in the sky. And on top of that, we have the energy of the eclipse, where again, it's that kind of double whammy of light being taken away from this world. You have that element of the energy being hidden, not being visible, not being accessible very easily. This is not the time necessarily to put forth your stuff for manifestation, like we always say, or like I always say, this is a time to listen, to sit back and listen. This is a time of reflection. And one of the things that I always love about astrology, how mystical, magical it can appear. And very often from the family, friends, or clients, I will hear, oh my God, how did you know that? I do not have a magical skills. I don't have a crystal ball. Very often when we look at the transits, what's happening, we can see a pattern. When we look at the eclipse, and we will go back to the previous eclipse, to either beginning of the eclipse, when we started 2.5 years ago in Aries and Pisces, Kimberly said, this is the last one. If we can see the start of the eclipse and see what happened at the beginning, how we closing that, or if we can go a few years back to the last one in Aries and see what was happening there, we can see that correlation, and very often the same things happening. I was sharing just before the recording what's happening in my private life with the new set of eclipses. We started the new set of eclipses in the Virgo and Pisces. And the themes that happened a few years ago, 2015-16, coming back again, and they're visible again. Again, what I'll be doing at this new moon, I'll be reflecting on, when did I start this set of eclipses in Aries and Libra a few months back, how we started, how we're closing, and also what happened before that when the nodes were reversed. And again, has there been anything around this set of eclipses that I can reflect back?
I think the understanding the cycles is the beauty of astrology. And I also feel like looking at when this cycle began, not looking, as Monica was saying, at the prior ones, but since this is the closing out, this is the last eclipse of this particular cycle, we won't see it again for around 8 years. Looking at when that began and what that means to you could be really useful in terms of what's happening. And since it's a solar eclipse, lunar eclipses are great. If you're lucky enough to have gone outside and had a clear sky to see them, a lot of times it's like my family and friends and I get together and we're having a nighttime picnic. We're sitting there, we're watching. It takes its time. It has a nice long window. It's lovely. Ah, a solar eclipse, it's a short window. It's there and it's impactful. And suddenly the light goes out and the temperature drops, and the birds stop. And even if you're watching it with people, everyone gets quiet. We're all just in that moment of awe. And it's so unusual. It takes us out of the ordinary. I feel like this could be a great time to open up for what we want to start anew or with that different perspective, not necessarily starting it on this day, but opening up to what does that look like. And I find that quite often my lunar eclipses, I am making change internally. The solar eclipses is often when the changes are happening in my external world, to the people around me, to the jobs, to the, once again, as we always say, go look at your chart and see what do you have in Aries? What house is Aries energy? And pay attention to, is this an area of life that you're going to start to feel the changes happening in?
And this, of course, historically also, if you think about what the Romans called Idus in March period, that it was an unstable period. And I don't think it's a coincidence because the solar eclipses and eclipses happened also, and there were changes. We know historically that there has been periods where people have noticed that there's more change and more sudden events that might be connected to eclipses and sudden turns of things. It's good to have to look out for that in your life. Leave space for that for a turn in a direction.
That's another thing, actually. You reminded me. Eclipses are beginning and the endings in one thing. Normally, we do say that around new moons and full moons as well, that the new moons, they are beginnings, but also ending of the previous cycle. The eclipses especially have that beginning and ending energy, and very often around that time, relationships and jobs and to start anew. And also this is a time, if you have noticed, whether in your own life or in media as well, where a lot of souls migrate as well. There is a lot of news usually, or heightened amount of news around people departing from this world. I find that around eclipses especially, you have that moment of the veil is thin. It's easier to cross over from either side. There is that element of in between, the spaces in between, the times in between, and actually it's easier to transition.
All right, let's pull up the chart so we can take a quick peek at some of the information that's happening here and also highlight what we're going to dive into as we unpack. Here's our chart, again, set to an Aries wheel. It may look different if you set it to your location. And we have all this Aries energy of Mercury, the Sun, the Moon, and Chiron. And just to point out, we mentioned this last time as well, that eclipse is happening at 9 degrees of Aries. And interestingly, the beginning of the month, the middle of the month, we had Venus start her retrograde at 9 degrees Aries. Mercury started its retrograde just past 9. I think it was just at 10, if I remember right. There's something about this energy and this Sabian symbol about giving new meaning to the old ways of being that feels very layered. And for me, that always means more powerful. We also have a lot of Pisces energy. We have Saturn, the North Node. Venus is retrograding back into Pisces now, and Neptune. And what's interesting is Neptune will, the day after this eclipse, go forward and ingress into Aries, just after Mercury has retrograded back into Pisces. They meet briefly and crisscross. Uranus and Jupiter have not changed much in the last 2 weeks. We do find that Mars has piqued our interest since it is the planet that is the ruler, dispositor of the Aries energy. And I'll go ahead and close it out and we'll start talking about the things that piqued our interest.
Neptune is going to move to Aries the day after the new moon. It's at, I don't see the chart right now, but it's at 29:57, I think. Pisces, and Neptune has been in Pisces since 2011. And during this period, I think that we have done a lot of stuff with spirituality and with how we have learned new ways or new forms, creative ways to have spirituality in our lives. Maybe connecting back to the era of Neptune that I see happened when it was last time ingressing into Aries in the 1862. There are quite many people that were heavily involved in the new esoteric movement that started the spiritual boom of the world that started in that century, the later parts, and then in the beginning of the next one. For example, also artists like Hilma af Klint had Neptune 1 degree in Aries. These people that created new forms of art, new forms of combining spirituality, or that we maybe didn't even understand so much back then, that have been lifted, which is very interesting, like a cycle, looking at what's happening with Hilma af Klint right now, when Neptune's going into Aries again, and there's a lot of talk about what to do with her art, and is it going to be hidden again from the public, how much is it going to be, and stuff like this. So just like connecting back to the spirit, what happened with spirituality back then, they were like a kind of revolution. So I just thinking about what can Neptune bring, what type of frames can it bring for the spirituality we created now when it ingresses into Aries. Can it give it some kind of frames, like going from romanticism to realism about it? What's the things that being boundlessness in Pisces, can they get another form in Aries, for example? This is just with Neptune, it's a lot of, it's not a straight line with things. And with Aries, I feel that it might be it's two very different energies to combine them. But like we are talking about astrological cycles, going back to look at that cycle in the 1800, it's very interesting to see the similarities in spirituality, in other forms of history. But I think it's going to be quite interesting day after that new moon, with Neptune ingressing and also other things that we're going to talk about. That's something I just figure could have to do with that.
It's interesting, isn't it, that we have new moon and we have eclipse, and Neptune feels like it's holding back. Okay, I want to be at the very last degree, very last minute of the previous sign at the time of the eclipse. When I actually go in, I'm going in after the eclipse, which there is something to be said for that the things, I feel like the things that happen after eclipse don't have as much of an impact than the things that happen before. The things that happen before, they're affected by the energy of the eclipse, where, you know, when things happen before, obviously that energy of the eclipse is already dissipating and going away. It's interesting that the Neptune feels like it's holding back. It's also interesting that Aries eclipse and Aries new moon doesn't have that Neptunian power behind it. That power is still reconciling the dreams from the previous sign. And we'll talk in a minute about the Venus as well. Venus is going from Aries to Pisces, and Mercury would be going from Aries to Pisces. There's a lot of that movement around this eclipse, where it just feels like, yes, it's that element of pioneering work with Aries and that push forward, and yet all the planets are trying to go back into Pisces, make that change into that retrograde movement. Kimberly, you mentioned earlier that Pluto, who is now at 3 degrees, is already at the degree that it will retrograde in May. There's a lot of that looking back to the past around this eclipse, even though, like we say, the new moon is in Aries and it's all about going forward. But how beautiful that Sabian symbol is as well, that we're giving new meanings to the old things. And to do that, we need to look back and reflect back. For me, the Neptune is representing the energy of our collective dreams. It's not just individual dreams, it's the dreams that we dream as a society, as a culture. And the different zodiac signs is how that dream then manifests. What form does it take? In a very simple way, the way I think sometimes about the planets and a zodiac sign is the planet is the energy, where the zodiac sign is the dress, is the costume that it's beginning to wear. Neptune is that collective dreams. It's all our dreams and visions, and it's all our nightmares as well. Let's not forget that we don't only dream about rainbows and unicorns. Those dreams are not nice. Neptune represents that, and then it goes into Aries. It will move into Aries day after the new moon. And it will take completely different clothing. That dream will represent in a different way that it did in the past 14 years in Pisces. It will be more impatient. I think we'll be more impatient to get to our dreams. I think that our dreams might become more pioneering. Again, Kimberly, just going back to what you were talking about, the initiatory dreams. I think there might be a lot of pioneering initiation ideas happening in the world in the next 14 years. But it's interesting that, again, we're doing that around an eclipse season. For me, that's quite interesting. That massive shift happens around the time when the light is taken away. Neptune is already very murky, very kind of foggy, very, I'm not quite seeing clearly. And at the same time, we're doing that around new moon and the time when we actually have an eclipse in the sky. There is something around that entry and the the zero Aries, which is quite important in our zodiac, that feels like we can't see the full picture yet.
And I think that we talk so much about 29 degrees, that anaretic degree, but we don't talk as often about the importance of the 0 degree. To me, this energy feels like when we graduate high school. Neptune's at 29 degrees. It is your spiritual graduation. Here's the test. The outer world is giving us those tests. Have you really embraced spirituality? Have you embraced being in touch with your visions and knowing what they are? Have you done the vision boards? Have you let yourself soak in these waters and float in it? Okay, good. Then you get to graduate and go to college. It enters 0 degrees Aries. What are you going to do with it now? What are you going to build with those visions and those dreams? But while it's at 0 degrees, it doesn't know how to do that yet. I find that when planets are changing signs, it's not until they hit that 1 degree that it's like we get into our groove and we know how to do it. And I remember the first few months in college, I kept looking over my shoulder like, but wait a minute, in high school we did it this way. Oh, now it's this way. And those new clothes that Monica was mentioning, they may not fit yet. It's like I'm getting used to them. I may not be used to the new class schedule, but I will get used to it. It's that how am I going to bring it forward? And with Neptune, it's almost always confusing. It's almost always unclear. We have to just feel our way and trust our way through, which can be difficult. And then I'm just going to throw in there as well. I love that, Anne, that you brought in how in the 1800s all these visionaries were coming forward. And instantly I was thinking about Madame Blavatsky, who was born just before, I think, the Aries shift. And she started off having salons at her house. Let's just bring people together. How Piscean. We all believe this. Let's come together. Let's talk. Let's be philosophical. Let's theorize. And from that came the Theosophy Society. Not necessarily a direct line, a very circuitous, but I don't think we know what our actions of the coming week will actually lead to. It's just important that we take those actions because they are leading to something. And if you're like me, there's always that Mercury is whenever Mercury's activated in transit, I tend to feel it in my chart. And as they're crossing paths, the ability to use language and to talk or to get the words that are floating in my head out. When we were doing our prep, there was a moment where we were all just staring at each other. And I had to laugh, and I'm like, okay, is this that Mercury's going back, getting ready to enter Pisces? Is this outer sign conjunction with Neptune? What's going on here? And I'm feeling that too, that with this Neptune getting ready, but holding back. I'm not going in until tomorrow. Then we're going to start taking action with all this. It's just creating a whole lot of holding space and not really sure what I'm doing with all of it. And the Monica you mentioned earlier too, how sometimes it's not always the beauty. That Neptune in Aries is also a time when there was a lot of political revolt and revolution. And here in the United States, we were having the Civil War. And a lot of things were happening in so many different countries based on people's ideology, fighting for that Aries, I'm going to fight for, don't tread on me. I'm going to fight for what I believe in and what I think is right. And you're not going to tell me how to be. Hopefully, we get to see with this ingress a lot more of that creation energy and a little less of that revolution fighting energy.
I think I would describe it as dreams of freedom, however you want to look at it, whether it's an actual freedom, the Emancipation Act and Civil War, there was uprising, obviously, in Europe, but also there's the expression in art, again, that dream of freedom, of doing something in a very free way. That's how I think about impressionism movement, this kind of quick strokes of on the paint just to capture the moment. How Neptune in Aries is that? This is not a long study of a body, Jamin, or of the dead nature that you can paint for days or weeks. This is, you have your canvas, there is a moment when the light touches the water, and that's it. And the next moment, that moment was gone. You had to be really quick to capture that. There is that kind of freedom of expression. And like you say, with Aries, we're fighting for our dreams to express ourselves, to find that freedom in a ways that we believe we need to have those needs met. It's interesting time. There is a few cycles changing, Neptune being a big cycle. And I think we will probably come back to this in the next episode because it is such a big cycle. This doesn't happen every day. This doesn't happen every week. This happens once every 14 years. The last time Aries, I think, Anna, you mentioned the last time Neptune was in Aries, it was 1863 to 1874, I think. It wasn't something that we remember. This is why astrology is such a beautiful tool, because we can track individually our moon cycle. When we start paying attention to the bigger cycle, we can start seeing the sun cycle and track our solar returns as well. But there are movements that affect us as a generations. There are movements that affect us as a culture. And Neptune is one of those cultural points where things are shifting for the next 14 years. We will see that shift and we'll be able to go back and say, actually, there's something different happening around that time. And it's interesting that it's happening around the 0 Aries point, around the same time as the new moon, around the same time as an eclipse, and also around the same time as Venus Cazimi and Mercury Cazimi. We were talking about that on the 23rd of March, which is day before we're recording that, Venus met Sun. Venus was at the heart of the Sun. She was being burned to the crisp and being reborn from the ashes like the phoenix. And like the warrior princess Xena that she is, now she is walking in front of the sun and she will be emerging as a morning star after her descent into the underworld and her death in the rebirth. And today we have Mercury at the heart of the sun, Mercury Cazimi. We have quite a few cycles happening around the same time, which is really interesting. And with Venus and Cazimi, that again, that doesn't happen every month. That doesn't happen every 2 months. The next time Venus will be at the heart of the sun will be January next year. What happened and what starts on the 23rd of March? We're going to close that cycle in January. We just started a completely new cycle. We closed the previous cycle. I think the previous cycle, if I'm not mistaken, I might be posting under our video, but I think the previous cycle started last year, April. I need to double check that. Again, we're closing a big cycle of Venus, and the last time she was actually at the heart of the sun. I need to double check actually which sign was she on. But I will post that under our videos because we're closing on one big cycle and we're starting another one. Again, there's this idea of what's happening with your desires, with your worth. How do you see your worth? She is at the heart of the sun at 2 degrees Aries. Again, it's like, where's your independence? How much do you value your independence? What is your freedom worth to you? How much will you sell your freedom for? Those are challenging questions, but those are the questions that Venus in Aries will ask you. And sometimes they sound really grand and they can be taken at the cultural level. Sometimes they're individual. How much will I compromise with my partner and limit my own freedom of expression to be in a safe relationship? And is that safe relationship actually healthy for me? Very often we'll compromise our own integrity and freedom to be with someone. And again, relationships are all about compromise and to a certain extent, and making sure that both needs are met. But those are the questions Venus will be asking in Aries, and those are the questions that we start the whole new cycle. So it will be very much about me. What do I want? How do I compromise myself for relationship, for the culture, for the religion, for the country, the corporate company that I work with, and how much of that freedom I need, and how much of my independence, my pioneering spirit, my courage I need to bring forth, because that's what I value and that's what's worth a lot for me.
Amen.
Truth.
And the last, actually, I just quickly checked, the last time Venus was at the heart of the sun was in June last year, not April, June, and it was in a sign of Gemini. The last cycle was all about crossroads, about asking the right questions around our siblings, how much the networks that we have are worth it. And what is the worth of our network? We had this conversation about our little network and what is the value of that network. And the value of this network very much is friendship. That podcast came out of friendship and us just hanging out online. And we've had those conversations as well around that Venus cycle, that we can't forget our foundation, that our foundation was just hanging out online and just chatting to one another. It's going to be interesting new cycle.
And then there's also what's happening with Mars.
Yeah.
And Mars we have been following for quite a long time as it's done its retrograde from Leo back into Cancer and then went direct and still in its post shadow until I believe it's early May. And it's currently in Cancer, the sign of its fall, where it can be very difficult to our get up and go may feel like it got up and went. Or we may be encountering a lot of, I want to have a couch fortress and just curl underneath and hide from the world. It can feel very non Mars like, I should say. It can feel like we're not having that energy to go. And Mars is having some interesting aspects. It's making a really tight trine to Saturn. It's making, I think it's an exact square to Chiron. You've got the watery Cancerian Mars linking up with Saturn in Pisces. And even though it's a trine, it doesn't feel very harmonious to me. It feels like a lot of tension energy is flowing rapidly, a lot of water. Neither of these planets are necessarily comfortable in the world of emotion. They like to take action. They like to be conscious oriented. They like to be linear. And that can be tricky. And this could also be the hurry up and wait feeling. Mars is let's get going. And Saturn says, okay, but wait, we have to figure out the plan. We have to make the packing list and pack the stuff into the car before we take that trip. So this one foot on the gas, one foot on the brake kind of energy. And then it's squaring Chiron and Aries. I think there's some type of healing energy happening here. And we've talked a lot the last 2 years as the North Node was moving through Aries about remembering and learning how to make it about oneself and where are we held back from that? Is it responsibility? Is it family? What holds us back from making it about what I want? And here's an opportunity if we've done the work to see where we get held back to maybe heal that. And I think it's about learning to be comfortable being uncomfortable with all this energy building up. I think that where we have not thinking about that Sabian symbol of giving new interpretation, new meaning to things of the past. What if those things of the past is where I did not take action or I did not take an action that was good for me, it was good for others? That could have residual emotions that are still lingering, even though it's in the past and even though it's gone. This could be an opportunity. I'm going to take action for myself. I'm going to take action that moves me forward. I'm going to take action that's really about me and just think of the healing power that can happen there. It feels a bit challenging and at the same time so worth the challenge if we can stay the course, if we can stay with this energy. And of course, Mars is going to keep reminding us of what we need to nurture within ourselves. I often think that when a planet, and I've probably said this before, but when a planet is in its fall like that, I think there's a superpower here. It's that we're going to do it in a way that doesn't fit society. Society says being that way is bad. Let's face it, in the Western world, to be very Mars is usually thumbs up approval. You're a go-getter. You take action. You know how to start things. You're self-initiative. These are things everybody wants on their resume. Mars in Cancer. I'm slowing down. I'm taking time for myself to rest and receive. I know what to take action on when I go forward. This is the artist that has that dream time before they figure out what the next painting is going to be or the next book is going to be that they write. I think that when we have Mars in Cancer, it's also about what do I need to nurture about myself? What part of me doesn't get enough attention, enough love, enough self praise, self worth, whatever that is? And this could be that opportunity to really be your own cheerleader, to pump it up on that level so that then we have the get up and go to get out there and make a difference and make it happen and do all those things we want. So those were some of the ideas floating through my head as I kept coming back over and over again to look at what's going on with that Mars. And I'm just going to throw in, Monica, you had shared when we were doing our kind of cap. It's interesting when you look at that chart how, other than the South Node, everything is sandwiched in between Mars and Pluto. They are like the guardians or the gatekeepers of all containing all this energy. And Mars, generally speaking, isn't happy containing energy. It wants to move and go with that energy. I get the sense of a lot of pressure as we're holding things in, but that's not the same as pushing it down. Pushing it down is to repress. Holding it in is to contain and allow it to grow and build before we do something with it. A lot of writers will talk about when they are having their inspiration, they don't tell anyone about their stories, about their plot, about their characters until they've actually put it into action and they actually have the writing flowing because it waters it down. It allows that energy to dissipate. This is a Mars that doesn't want its energy to dissipate. It wants to nurture, it wants to contain, it wants to create a space for things to grow and accumulate so that when we're ready to be that thoroughbred out the gate, we can go.
A great summary of the chart.
I want to say I wouldn't be myself if I didn't bring the Mars down a notch.
Go for it.
I have to say the challenge that I have with that Mars and that Chiron, like you say, there's this healing energy around ourselves and our own wound. And when I mean ourselves, I mean that capital S self and our wound, but only when we actually take action internally. The Mars is in Cancer. It's that internal soothing, nurturing quality that we need to take action on and soothe ourselves, soothe that inner child, that inner wound that we have. The challenge with those two planets, actually having that square, Mars in Cancer and Chiron in Aries, is that we can turn our wounds into our weapons. And that's what we're turning from the victim to an oppressor. It's like, you don't understand because you've never been in my, and I'm going to beat you over the head with how much of a victim I am. And that's a really dangerous place to be because that absolutely leads nowhere. It doesn't lead to reconciliation, doesn't lead to forgiveness, and it doesn't lead to healing. That just creates that perpetual cycle of I've been a victim, now I will be perpetrator. And we've seen that kind of old cartoon where the boss shouts at dad, then comes home, shouts at mom, shouts at the older child, and then the older child shouts at the younger child. And that's for me as well, it's the Chiron in Aries very often energy, where we are getting locked into our own pain and our own wound so much we don't realize that we're turning from a victim into a perpetrator. And that's a very dangerous place to be. There is a beauty in this chart. There is a beauty in Saturn in Pisces and Mars in Cancer speaking in harmony with one another. And Saturn can help us build the structure and put that Martian energy, and we can have that perseverance to go through no matter what happened to us, no matter what old wound, Piscean wounds, like collective wounds, or the childhood wounds we can uncover. We can have that strength and perseverance to go through it. We can have the energy and the structure to go through the healing. The challenge will be to recognize that wounded child in us, Chiron in Aries and the Mars in Cancer. The wounded child is when what you said about Aries. That's the child that comes into the world straight from mother's womb, full of screams and shouts, and it's all about me. That's the kind of energy of Aries. And when we put Chiron in there, it's that very much energy. Look at me, look how bad I've suffered, look how much this person mistreated me. And we're getting locked into that me energy. And it's very difficult to get it out. But there is an opportunity with Saturn and Mars. Kimberly, everything you said about that healing energy, there is opportunity there to get out of that zone and actually concentrate on what is it that I need. If I sit down and I'll sit with myself and I really will rest, what is it that wounded child, Cancer, that wounded inner child needs for me? And where can I find that energy and that perseverance to find that healing?
And also with Mars in Cancer, one of the kind of spontaneous, innate, automatic responses we could have is to sidestep, to want to be very Cancerian and move away from what feels uncomfortable. And I'm thinking that a lot of this is healing the conditioning from our families and our society and our country, cancer themes. How has that stopped me from making it about myself? To come back to those things usually means there's an external opportunity or external crisis. This is an eclipse. Something in my outer world is pushing those buttons that make me feel wounded all over again or make me remember when I was wounded. The question is, are we going to embrace that Mars energy and go be brave and go head on? Or are we going to embrace the Cancerian energy and maybe go a little on the sidestepping? Or do we bring it together and not be the bully and not be the avoider, right? But be that person who's integrated and brave and whole and says, I am going to focus on taking the right action that's right for me. And that can be a little hard, but it can be very healing if we're able to stay the course. Any other burning thoughts on Mars or anything else in the chart? Or are you all ready to move on to tips and tricks?
I think tips and tricks.
I just want to ask one question. With this energy we have right now, I don't think I've said ever so many times I don't know in the last few weeks. Really, I don't know the answer to this, or I don't know. With this energy, I want to ask you to ask yourself, where am I not ready? We have the Aries energy coming on, but what things am I not ready with? Do I need to revisit right now so I can then proceed after the eclipse, after the new moon has got started? That's something here that's maybe not clear, or maybe something I feel that I want to revisit still. So that's my tip.
I love that. Mine is similar, different, but similar. So the last week, I have been aware of floating in my head, of just daydreaming or zoning out, or we're having a conversation and I just freeze because I'm thinking the words, but I can't seem to get them connected. The brain and the mouth are not connected. And I think it's because of all that Neptune and Mercury energy we talked about, preparing for this great shift of passing each other. I'm wondering how it would be different if instead of just floating and noticing that, if I was more intentional about making time for rest and using that time to intentionally have conversation with myself or my guides or my higher self, or intentionally creating time to remember my visioning that I did back when the sun was in Pisces, or back when, something was happening, to shore up that Piscean side of myself so that I'm feeling very one with it, so that I'm ready to take it forward as we move into that Aries and have to do work with it. How do I take action if I'm not remembering the action I desire to take? And I'm just questioning how I can carve out a little more time for that kind of work in the coming days as this eclipse is happening. Perhaps that will allow more energy or information to download. And if that's something that resonates, I invite others to try doing the same and share their experiences.
I have two short one, again, very similar. I think this is the end of the Aries Libra eclipse. We're stepping into Pisces and Virgo. And those eclipses started in April 2023. Again, what happened in your life since April 2023? What themes were coming up around that time when we had our first solar eclipse in Aries? And how do we close that? Think about it as this new moon to new moon cycle. There was a beginning and the end, and we're closing the cycle now. What themes have emerged in your life? And what have you learned from that? So it would be good to close that cycle with reflection on what have you learned in the Pisces and Aries cycle. And following that a little bit as well, because Venus is in this, I keep saying Aries Pisces, sorry, Aries Libra cycle of eclipses. But the second one is the Venus in me. Because she's having such a long journey, again, how do you close the circle, I want to say circle of life, circle of Venus, a cycle of Venus, her last eclipse being in Gemini, starting that Gemini cycle that ends on 23rd of March this year. And then we're starting the one in Aries that will finish in January. Again, that reflection on what emerged since June last year around themes, Venusian things of worth and desire and beauty in your life, around the themes of the Gemini brings, themes of crossroads and siblings and networks and information and communication. And then how do you close that? What is that journey with Venus that taught you, and what is it that you had to strip when you were going underground to be reborn again and then start the Aries one? And again, as Venus is now emerging to become a morning star, she's not visible in the sky yet, she will be in a few weeks. What themes from the Aries underworld you want to bring forward and move on for the next few months to again learn about the worth and beauty and desire and what you desire around the Aries themes of pioneering and themes of courage and standing up for, or being very aggressive or very boundaried around things that you desire and love.
That's all beautiful. Any and all of these suggestions are so powerful to work with, and I would love to hear others' experiences about this eclipse, about these tips, about any of the specific transits that spoke to you in the comments below if you're watching us on YouTube. Or as always, we love it when people are listening to the podcast and hit that button to share or review us so that other people can find their way and join in the chat. We'll be back in 2 weeks' time to look at the next full moon. Hope to see you all then. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for joining us in this week's Astro Chat. We hope that you enjoyed the discussion and would love to hear about anything that resonated with you. Keep the conversation going by posting shareable content on our Instagram, Facebook, or YouTube pages. You can also email us at astrochatpodcast@gmail.com. Astro Chat is uploaded every 2 weeks on the Saturday before each new and full moon. Look for us on your favorite podcast platform as well as on YouTube. You can support Astro Chat and receive exclusive content by donating on our Patreon page. We look forward to chatting with you all again at the next lunation of the moon.